Okay, so it's been a while since I did a purely venting, ranting video that has nothing to do with a particular article. And that's because Kamala Harris now has the task of quickly finding a vice presidential candidate because, for those who are unaware, Joe Biden has dropped out. He finally listened to people who said that he needs to drop out. Now, and I've mentioned this before, my concern isn't so much the state of the country, because I would take a rambling senile old man over a rambling senile fascist old man. That wasn't my concern. My concern is his health. And I've mentioned this before, I'm not going to go into it again, but now he endorsed Kamala. Now Kamala has all the pledged delegates she needs to win the nomination. Just like nobody wanted to challenge Joe Biden. Well, no one of consequence wanted to challenge Joe Biden at the beginning of this. Nobody challenged Kamala to take the place of Joe Biden. Because let's face it, technically she's already on the ticket. You know, it was a Biden-Harris ticket. Now, some people might say that the vice president is not that consequential and it doesn't matter, but it's still, she was on the ticket. Her name was on the ticket. So, now she has to pick a running mate. And she has to do it pretty damn quickly because even though the convention is, I think, in mid-August, I don't know if they're still going to do a virtual roll call. So, to ensure that they get on the ballot in Ohio, even though I question whether they could actually win Ohio, but that's a different thing. They need to be on all 50 states for the same reason why third-party candidates are still not viable in this country. Because most of them aren't on the ballot in all 50 states. So you can't whine that you're throwing away your vote if a major party isn't on all 50 state ballots. But anyway, to my beef with the media. I read 4 articles speculating as to who could potentially be her running mate. And in 3 of them, now, I didn't look to see if this was their original material, or it looked like that this was original to each agency, not that they all pulled from the AP. But each and every one of them, of 3 out of 4, mentioned Gavin Newsome, which immediately that's annoying because he is the governor of California. She's from California. So, right then, you know it's unconstitutional. And to make matters worse, they point out that they can't be from the same state and that there's a constitutional hurdle. No, it's not a constitutional hurdle. It's a wall. The Constitution, and it's the 12th Amendment for those who want to look it up, it's unconstitutional. The 12th Amendment says that they have to come from different states. Now, whether you agree with that or not, it makes sense because you want a varied amount of ideas. You know, it's assumed that if they come from the same state, they think similarly, and you want to have someone who can help diversify your appeal. And so, even if it wasn't unconstitutional, not not a good plan. But it is unconstitutional. So it's not a constitutional hurdle. It is not constitutional. I do not see how the Supreme Court would say, oh yeah, it says clearly that it's unconstitutional, come from the same state, but shrug. Now, granted, the Supreme Court does that with things they, want to have happen regardless of the constitutionality. But something tells me that that would only work if, say, Trump had picked Rubio to be his running mate. Then they would pretzel themselves to try to allow that. With the Democrats, they wouldn't. And because the Democrats actually possess principles, they're not doing that. Actually, it was just announced who Kamala's campaign is looking at, and Gavin Newsome isn't one of them. Now, granted, I love Gavin Newsome. The way he makes the Fox anchors look horribly stupid and absolutely insane in a very calm demeanor, I'm fine with that. I'm a big fan of Pete Buttigieg that's one of the same reasons. He also is not being vetted by the Harris campaign, which, it's hard because she's already a minority. She's a woman, she's part Asian, she's black. She's black, she's Asian, she's a woman. So you don't want to put another minority on the ticket, even though Pete is white. He is a combat veteran. But he's also gay. And I've mentioned it in a previous video that there are some people, even amongst Democrats, who not the fact that he's gay, but that he's actually married to a man. That he is happily living as a gay man is a bridge too far. Apparently these Democrats think gay people should be miserable. Don't know. But, so he's not being vetted either, but the fact is that even though it was considered that Gavin Newsom was a candidate for vice president, is just mind-blowing and makes me wonder if the media thinks, oh, well, the Supreme Court sees the Constitution as just a bunch of guidelines and not hard and fast unless they say so. We're going to do the same thing. Why? Seriously, guys, it is unconstitutional. I do not know why his name was even considered. Yes, he's great when dealing with Fox News and talking them down from their insanity in a calm way without giving in to their rhetoric. That's great. I love that about him. But why are we even saying he's a candidate? I know that you're speculating. I get that. But you put out so many good names without having to add Gavin Newsom. Yes, someday he will make either a great vice president or a great president. That is, nobody's denying that. Well, maybe Republicans are, but whatever. Nobody's denying that. But let's be, at least somebody should care about the Constitution. I just don't know why, especially since it's not well known, because unfortunately the Constitution isn't well known by a lot of people, including me. I had to look that up. I heard that it was unconstitutional and I had to look up where. So I'm not a constitutional scholar. I'm not going to say I have the Bill of Rights memorized, let alone any other amendment. But at least when I hear these things, I look it up to see where it is and why people are saying that. And it's plain. So the fact that who I consider myself fairly well informed, didn't know this and had to look up, okay, I'm being told it's unconstitutional. Where does it say it's unconstitutional? I would think that it would behoove the media, who is supposed to inform their readers or their listeners as to, I don't know, facts, that Gavin Newsome can't be considered simply because of the 12th Amendment. Again, like I said, it's probably not a great plan to have the president, vice presidential candidates from the same state anyway, simply because, well, if you're going to have a United States, you should probably have someone from a different part of the country than you. I mean, that just makes perfect sense, especially if you're from a safe democratic state. You might want to, pick someone who could bring in voters that you're not as strong with. Bring in states that you're not as strong in. So, again, there's so many reasons why not to, without the Constitution coming into it, to not pick someone from your state. But then there is the fact that it is unconstitutional. And why they're calling it a hurdle, I do not know. It is just bonkers that people are claiming that like it's doable if you just pretzel your brain enough to make the 12th Amendment say something it doesn't say. I just honestly do not know why they are calling it, why they mention him, and why it's considered a constitutional hurdle. I mean, it's great that they even point out that there is a problem, but then why bring him up? I mean, it's just bonkers. Why bring him up if you know that it can't happen? I mean, Pete can't happen. Gretchen Whitmer can't happen. Even though she's being vetted, I hear she is actually being vetted. I would love an all-woman ticket, but the toxic males, which seem to be making a comeback and becoming more and more prevalent, hopefully it's just the loud ones, but it makes me worried that Kamala is already going to have a hard time just being a woman herself. But to have a woman vice president worries me even more. She should pick someone who is seen as a manly man. Not just a man, because if that were the case, it would be Pete, who, for all intents and purposes, seems fairly manly, except for the fact that he's gay. And a lot of these people who are fixated on the manly man just consider gay men to be just women and not manly at all. Now, obviously that's not true, but that's how bigots tend to think. So, I'm surprised that they're vetting Governor Whitmer. I mean, I love her. I think she would do great. I don't think this country can handle having two women at the top, because a lot of the men who will vote for Kamala Harris, even though she is a woman, could at least take solace in the fact that there is a white man on the ticket. So they can, at least in their heads, dream up scenarios where she's not actually in charge and it's the white man. Whatever it takes them to accept that Kamala is at the top of the ticket and she's really your only choice. Unless you're a fascist dickhead, in which case, by all means, vote Trump. But, yeah, it just drives me crazy that I could understand one article. I mean, I go through mainstream media sources, so even one article is one too many. But, okay, one article, it was, somebody made a mistake, that they just put him in there, but they weren't thinking. But the fact that they mentioned constitutional hurdle, and that it was 3 articles I saw, and not just one, it's just inexcusable. Media, do better. Seriously, why even mention him? I mean, like I said, I've seen who the campaign's actually vetting, and Gavin Newsome isn't mentioned at all because apparently the campaign actually cares about the Constitution. However, that makes the media look really stupid and makes the media look like that they do not care about the Constitution. They see the Supreme Court doesn't care, so they're deciding they don't care or something. I just don't get it. I really don't. It's just maddening. So, yeah. Media needs to do better. They should not be putting forward a name that's patently unconstitutional simply because he's a rising star in the Democratic Party. Yes, he is. That doesn't change the fact that he cannot run for vice president. He cannot be picked. And to even mention it, you could say something like, people have been putting forth this name, but it's not possible because they're both from California, that it's unconstitutional. But not make it sound like it's doable, which they did. So, I think I rambled on long enough, and I do have a more traditional video coming, but with that, I will see you guys in the next video.